White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs said President Obama has not made a decision yet.
The president has said in his speech that we're not going to make any decisions about transfer or release that threaten the security of this country, and that these cases are being evaluated as they come on a case-by-case basis. I'm not ruling it in or ruling it out.
Well, Robert Gibbs says progress is being made in the president's goal of closing down the detention center by January of next year. 7 detainees were shipped out of Guantanamo already this week.
And now the bigger picture. The White House says it will do whatever it takes to keep photos of detainee abuse from being released to the public. An appeals court ruled today that the White House can keep those pictures secret, while the administration asked the Supreme Court to permanently block the release of the photos. Some senators wanted to attach legislation that would ban the release of these photos in the war supplemental bill being debated in Congress, but President Obama is promising members of Congress these pictures will not be released. And if he loses in court, he could still use executive power to classify the photos as secret. Josh Gerstein is a White House reporter for Politico. Josh, this is a huge political challenge for the president from the left. Is that right? Because you've got liberal members of Congress who say, wait a second, the photos should be released.
Yeah, you have a whole caucus of liberal Democrats in the House. I don't know the exact numbers, but certainly dozens of them, who say, why are we making a special exemption to our freedom of information laws? This case has been pending for a few years now in the courts, and suddenly at the last minute, because we don't like the outcome, we're going to try to pass a new law specifically to address these photos. And they've sort of put the kibosh on an amendment that the Senate passed 90-6 at the very last minute a couple weeks ago while working on this supplemental bill.
And the politics was fascinating, Josh, because all of a sudden that liberal wing that you mentioned, they had a lot more power because conservatives were angry about the war supplemental bill because it had things like IMF funding unrelated to the war. So it seemed like you had this strange coalition of conservatives upset about things not related to the war, and some Democrats upset about this provision about the photographs, who came together to force the White House to backpedal on the supplemental, right?
Right, and in fact, it seemed to be like a trade-off. The White House was going to have to choose: were they going to anger the left of their own party, or were they going to anger the more moderate Democrats and perhaps the slightly more liberal Republicans who had raised issues about this IMF funding? And ultimately, it looks like in the final analysis, they wanted to have the liberals on board and were less concerned about losing a few of the more conservative votes.
Now, one of the things that you're terrific at is sort of putting in context how the administration has changed its policy. During the campaign, at the beginning of the administration, what was their policy towards transparency, openness, things like these photographs?
Oh, well, within the first day or two, we had the president announcing he was going to have the most open and transparent administration in history, that not only did they want all this information made public, but it should all be put right up on the internet. And indeed, when this detainee photos thing came up for the first time, the administration said it was hopeless to challenge it in court, and they were just going to let the photos come out. And then suddenly, a few weeks after that decision was announced in April, the president abruptly reversed himself and said, no, we're going to fight tooth and nail to keep this stuff secret. So there's really no question that there was a reversal here. And now the president's saying he might even declare the photos classified. And that was a question that many reporters had asked several weeks ago. The White House was mum about it, and now said to the Senate that he would consider classifying the photos.
And Josh, I'm curious, beyond the reversal, is there some sloppiness here as well? Because we're hearing that Rahm Emanuel rushed down to speak with members of Congress to assure them that the photos would not be released. What is going on with the handling of this?
Well, clearly that 3-week period where they ultimately decided to reverse themselves is pretty sloppy. From a legal point of view, it's generally not a great idea to come out in public and say your case is hopeless before you decide to pursue it further in the courts. So sure, I think there have been a lot of less than sure-footed moves over these detainee photos, and it may be something that the administration should have focused on a lot more clearly when it first came up.
Josh Gerstein, White House reporter for Politico. Josh, thanks as always. Great reporting. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Coming up this Sunday on Meet the Press, an exclusive interview with Vice President Joe Biden. No doubt moderator David Gregory will ask him about blocking the release of prisoner abuse photos and the politics involved.